He's going to tell us about 3D therapy. Thank you, Charlie, for having invited me, and I'd like to congratulate you because you always are very classy when you invite us. Your father would have been proud of you, would have been proud of witnessing this today.
When you invited me, you asked me to talk about innovation. So I tried to build something around sleep apnea, which is essential for orthodontics, because I think it will save us from the aesthetic drifting that we may be accused of. Or we are here to help our patients breathe. Breathing is vital, and the integration of our deformities with sleep apnea are colossal in both children and adults. So I'm very happy to speak about a pathology which to me is the very basis for my activity. This study which I did, well, I must say that I have one conflict of interest. I am in charge of 2 scientific studies with ResMed. It's a study I carried out with my daughter Aline, who is a maxillofacial surgeon like myself. And you see here devices with the same design, conception, but one was made by hand, and the other one is made by CAD/CAM. We'll see whether this is relevant or not. This study comes from a large study, ORCAD, 3-year follow-up of 300 patients treated with mandibular advancement device. And we were able to see that the computer-designed device had results which were much better than those of the traditional appliance. One is thermoformed, the other one is made through injection of plastic. This is how it's done. An impression is taken, and you digitalize the impression, and then you do a 3D design of the device. It is produced by a laser, polished and delivered. There's a second phase where there now is digital impression. So it's digital from the impression all the way to delivery. This is the ORCAD study, 5-year follow-up of patients. It gave rise to a first publication in Sleep Medicine in 2015. The initial results were excellent, and you see that there's about 80% good results for those who wear the device. But we did have one problem, which we discovered and we hadn't imagined. There was a significant difference between the 2 types of appliances. All of the appliances aren't worth the same, aren't good as good as the others. And there are significant differences in the results. Here are the results: 80% approximately for a digitally produced one, and 60% for the regular one. So basically, in the literature, you have between 50 and 60% results with a normal device, a normal mandibular advanced device, and with the computer-designed one, you arrive at 80%. And so the number one criterion is the choice of the device, and that is not something we had expected. We did studies on the x-rays of these patients that we had seen from the front, basically. And with the drawings from Da Vinci and Isard, we realized that our patients had more class 2s, but it's exactly the same percentages in the overall population. But there's maxillary endoplasia in 70% of the patients, and endoalveoli of the maxilla in 90% of the patients. 73% of the patients were by endoalveoli and endognasia. So it's important in prevention for a child to be able to breathe the dental arch has to be wide enough, but the orbital arch has to be large enough as well. And before putting in the gene system, you sometimes need to do things before that. And we have 3 times more success with the CAD-CAM device than with the regular one. The class 2 superocclusion or overbites are easier to fix. The mandible is in the posterior position. You put the mandible in the right position. For each additional millimeter, the probability of success increases by 20%. That's logical as well. Someone who cannot propulse the mandible forward will not get much success with this device. For each additional centimeter of the waist circumference, you get less good results. These people are not good responders, and they're not good responders for sleep apnea, and these are the ones that are the most difficult to treat. And when you say that at the outset they should start a diet, but it's difficult to get an obese person to lose weight. And for each additional unit of the sleep apnea index, the likelihood of success decreases by 3%. When you have an index between 15 and 30, you have a medium severity apnea. And when I was asked about novelties, this is one new element. The mandibular advancement device should be provided first and not the PPC. When you're between 15 and 30, and above 30, PPC is what is provided first. And the mandible advancement device is provided if patients refuse or cannot receive PPC. You have here the larger share of the cohort which remains treated at 2 years, which is important. Therapeutic escape is not that high, even for severe indices. We've treated people with an index over 30 in case of a failure of PPC. Everything is 3D, so it's much easier to analyze the differences in the teeth positioning. And there was very little tooth movement on the mandible, mostly a limited number of degrees, but no incidence. This is an additional study following ORCAD. It's called ESTAMP. We took 2 groups. We gave them the mandibular advancement device, randomized to one group, and then a washout period. And then you switch the appliances, and so the patients have received both appliances. Am I going too fast? I have spoken for 10 minutes, and I have 5 minutes left. So in both groups, the main hypothesis was that I thought that the vertical dimension was underestimated in the use of these devices, and for me that was the #1 criterion. We included adults with traditional criteria for this type of trial, and we looked at the index apnea, the quality of sleep, the vertical dimension was analyzed, and compliance. So this is the organization. We had them take a cone beam exam with each of the devices before and after. So the question was, did they have the same airways with both appliances? And we had about 70% of the maximum propulsion for the patients, and then the AHI was improved, mostly with the people who got the CAD-CAM device, and patients were totally treated above 50%. The index was significant, and there was a difference. And the airways, which you see, are very significant. What does this mean? This means that between both devices, there is a significant difference in the results, and from the anatomical point of view as well, since the airways appear totally differently. The difference is such that it required that the lab drop the traditional appliance and use only a more active one. You see here the traditional one and the CAD-CAM one, and propulsion is very much improved. In conclusion, we were able to demonstrate that there was a significant difference in the airways in the patients who had the finest possible appliance. In the choice, there's a possibility of adapting it, but there's the actual design of the prosthesis, which has to be